Few expressions carry as much power as the words I am, and yet most people pronounce them as casually as breathing, without noticing. They say, I am anxious, I am bad with money, I am lonely, not realizing that in this seemingly simple act, they are planting identities into the quantum field. What should have been a fleeting description becomes a vibrational decree. Bruce Lipton shows us that every internalized belief acts like a genetic switch, turning on or off biological, emotional, and even spiritual possibilities. When you say I am, you are activating these invisible programs. The body listens, the field responds, and life begins to reorganize itself to validate that statement, whether conscious or not. Joe Dispenza deepens this idea by revealing that when you think and feel from the perspective of a future identity, for example, as someone already healed, already loved, already fulfilled, your brain begins to reconfigure. Neural connections, hormonal circuits, the magnetic field, everything adjusts as if it were already true. I am does not describe a phase, it shapes a destiny, and it is exactly here that the paradox lies. We believe we use I am to narrate what we live, but in truth, it is shaping what we will live. Each time you say I am, a seed of reality is planted. Time and space merely arrange the terrain for it to blossom. What appears casual is, in fact, causal. This is the invitation of this video, to use I am not as a report of what has happened, but as a vibrational decree of what you choose to be now. Not out of illusion, but out of awareness, because you are not describing a state. You are summoning an existence. And the field always listens. Without noticing, you speak declarations every day that function as silent commands. I am tired. I am forgetful. I am unlucky. Words scattered in daily life that seem harmless, but are not, because each one acts as an energetic seal. I am does not merely describe a feeling. It emits a frequency, and that frequency becomes the reference for the field surrounding you. The universe does not distinguish whether what you affirm is temporary or permanent, fair or unfair. It simply responds. Reality does not organize itself according to what you desire, but according to what you declare yourself to be. Especially in the unspoken lines of your inner dialogue. What you repeat without questioning becomes vibrational code, and the quantum field, sensitive by nature, mirrors that code back in the form of experience. These micro-declarations over the days construct an identity that is not always true, but begins to feel solid. And that is why we often feel trapped in patterns we cannot explain. It is not a lack of intention. It is an excess of unconscious affirmations shaping the foundation of your life. Until these roots are recognized, conscious manifestation will continue to collide with hidden programming. The first step, therefore, is not to change everything at once. It is to observe, to carefully listen to which I am statements you have been feeding, because they are not neutral. They are energetic decrees that, even unnoticed, are defining the contours of your reality. And when you change what you affirm yourself to be, everything around you begins to change with you. All true change begins at the level of identity. Some try new habits, new strategies, new paths. But if the foundation that sustains these actions remains the same, everything tends to return to the starting point. It is like swapping out apps on a computer without changing the motherboard. The programs may change, but they are still limited by the same original codes. I am is exactly that, the source code that commands the rest. The way you define yourself, even unconsciously, determines the choices you make, the limits you accept, the results you attract. It may seem invisible, but it acts as the gravitational center of your existence. As long as your identity is tied to the past, your attempts to manifest something new will collide with the old vibration. Bruce Lipton shows us that beliefs are not just ideas, they are biological instructions. When you say, I am anxious, I am sick, I am confused, you are activating automatic programs in the body and in the field. Identity is not an innocent description. It is a direct command to your biology and to the reality around you. That is why transforming the I am is not a detail. It is the starting point. When you shift identity, even subtly, the entire system around you begins to reorganize. Opportunities, encounters, even the way your body responds to life, all transform. Because reality always obeys the frequency of who you believe yourself to be. In quantum physics, there is a fascinating phenomenon called the observer effect. It reveals that the mere act of observing a particle influences its behavior. In other words, conscious observation collapses one among many possibilities. Reality ceases to be only potential and becomes form. The observer shapes the observed. When you say I am, you are self-observing. Without realizing it, you are collapsing one of the multiple possible versions of yourself. Each I am is a choice among infinite timelines, and the universe, sensitive to conscious focus, organizes the field around that choice. What was only possibility becomes matter. What was neutral becomes destiny. This process happens all the time, even without deliberate intention. Every time you affirm I am forgetful, I am messy, I am fragile, you are activating the collapse of a specific reality. Not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of where you placed your attention and emotion. Identity sticks because it has been repeatedly observed. That is why assuming a new I am is more than an affirmation exercise. It is an act of creation. Each time you declare a new version of yourself and sustain that vision with feeling, you influence the field as a conscious observer. You step out of autopilot and begin to actively participate in shaping your timeline. Perhaps the issue is not the I am, but the way we use it without presence. Most people don't realize they are decreeing realities while merely trying to describe a moment. They say, I am stressed, when they just want to express that the day was hard. But the quantum field does not interpret context. It responds to the declared vibration. That is how temporary states become identity prisons. You are not always tired, but by saying, I am tired, you transform a passing sensation into a fixed identity. The same happens with emotions, pains, limitations. They arise and are meant to pass, but the I am frames them as permanent realities. And then, without noticing, you live inside a narrative you yourself created and reinforced. Repetition turns loose declarations into structural codes. It is like drawing the same symbol in the field day after day until it becomes solid. What was once a cloud turns into a block. And this block begins to shape your choices, your posture, even your body. Awareness of this is not for guilt, but for liberation. Observing the automatic use of I am is the first step to deactivate identities that no longer serve you. You don't need to force yourself to invent a radically new version of who you are. You only need to stop feeding, day after day, the version that limits you. The silence between an old I am and a new one is already the beginning of a new life. Some believe the universe punishes or rewards according to worthiness or conduct, but the quantum field does not operate with moral judgment. It has no preferences. It only responds. Like a sensitive mirror, it reflects back precisely what it receives in frequency. This is not punishment, it is vibrational accuracy. When you declare I am incapable, the universe does not ask whether it is fair, true, or exaggerated. It simply receives that command as vibrational data and organizes itself to reflect that frequency back. The same applies when you affirm I am prosperous, even if you do not yet see signs in the external world. Frequency precedes form. The field does not react to appearance, but to essence. You may look successful on the outside, but if you vibrate self-sabotage within, the field will respond to the real vibration. On the other hand, even if everything around you seems scarce, if you sustain a vibration of trust and abundance internally, reality begins to reorganize in surprising ways. This understanding is liberating, because it removes us from the role of victims of chance and returns us to the position of conscious co-creators. The universe does not need to be convinced, it needs to be directed. And I am is that direction. Each time you use it with awareness, you are updating the map of your reality. Assuming the divine state is not about placing yourself above anyone. It is not spiritual arrogance, nor superiority disguised as light. Being God in action means becoming coherent. It means that what you think, feel, and live all move in the same vibrational direction. It is when the I am you declare finds no resistance in the body and no contradiction in the frequency. It is a state of deep, silent, and true alignment. This alignment does not depend on perfection. It depends on truth. When you affirm I am peace and act with kindness, breathe with presence, and choose not to react impulsively, that I am becomes real. Not by imposition, but by integration. The divine state is not theatrical. It reveals itself in subtle gestures, silent decisions, and small, coherent choices. Joe Dispenza explains that the brain can be neurologically reconfigured to sustain new identities. This process is called neuroplasticity. When you repeat an I am with corresponding feeling and action, new neural connections are formed. Over time, that new identity ceases to be an effort and becomes a natural state of being. The divine is not a distant idea. It is a frequency that vibrates the moment you declare something with a clean heart and a present body. There is no more distance between what you say you are and what you vibrate as reality. And it is at this very point that I am ceases to be a phrase and becomes living presence, acting in the world. Imagine two tuning forks, instruments that vibrate at a certain sound frequency. If you strike one and bring it close to the other without touching it, the second begins to vibrate at the same note. This phenomenon is called resonance. It requires no effort, only proximity and attunement. The same happens with manifestation. The I am you sustain makes the reality around you begin to vibrate at the same frequency. When you affirm I am abundant and sustain that vibration with posture, choices, and feeling, you are not forcing anything to happen. You are simply becoming a center of resonance. Reality compatible with that note begins to move toward you, not by magic, but by vibrational affinity. It is subtle physics, like attracts like when there is real vibrational coherence. That is why so many manifestation attempts fail when made through effort. You may try to pull abundance into your life, but if you vibrate scarcity, you are out of tune. The field does not move by intense desire, but by stable frequency. Your identity is the tuning fork that initiates the entire process. What you affirm to be defines what can echo around you. This understanding invites us to stop fighting and start vibrating. To align the I am with small daily gestures that reinforce that inner note. It is not about repeating until you are exhausted. It is about vibrating until you resonate. The quantum field is sensitive, like a finely tuned instrument. And when you become a clear transmitter, life begins to play the melody of your new identity. Bruce Lipton states that more than 95% of our daily behaviors are governed by unconscious patterns. This means that, even with good conscious intentions, what really commands your vibration most of the time is autopilot. And this autopilot has been fed for years with I ams you may never have chosen, only inherited, repeated, or accepted. Phrases like I am disorganized, I am the type who sabotages myself, I am hard to love were recorded in the subconscious since childhood, reinforced by painful experiences, family remarks, or internal repetitions. Over time, they became deep grooves in the nervous system, activated automatically without you even noticing. Reprogramming this system does not happen with a single decree, but it does happen. The practice begins with conscious interruption, noticing when an old I am arises and not feeding it. Instead of forcing yourself to say the opposite with false euphoria, you can choose neutral versions, safer ones, that already guide the field toward a new path. Instead of I am horrible with money, for example, saying I am learning to relate to money in a healthier way. This approach reduces subconscious resistance, which rejects affirmations that are too far from current reality. Small, repeated, intentional shifts create new neural and vibrational connections. And over time, the new I am stops feeling strange and starts sounding familiar. And what is familiar to the subconscious, the universe begins to reflect naturally. Lasting transformations do not happen in dramatic explosions. They begin in almost imperceptible details, in how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake, in the thought you choose to feed upon waking, in how you respond to the silence of the universe. This is where micro-decrees live, small daily affirmations that, over time, shift your entire timeline. Many people give up on reprogramming because they think they must force affirmations they don't yet feel as true. But the subconscious does not respond well to forced radicalisms. It accepts better gradual transitions, consistent and emotionally possible. Saying, I am a millionaire, when you are buried in debt, may generate more disconnection than alignment. But affirming, I am learning to prosper with more awareness, already plants a real seed. These micro-decrees function as bridges. They do not deny the present, but neither do they crystallize it. They offer a new vibrational direction without triggering internal rejection. They are like invisible stairways, Each small affirmation raises the frequency until the new I am becomes as natural as the old one. And when that happens, the quantum field responds with fluidity. You do not need to change everything today, but you can choose one phrase not to repeat tomorrow. You can replace an I am disorganized with I am organizing my space little by little. You can drop an I am unlucky for I am learning to notice the opportunities around me. Each phrase is a step, and many gentle steps in the right direction build silent miracles. As long as I am remains just a phrase spoken during meditation or in moments of inspiration, it stays as an intermittent frequency. A spark of possibility that flickers on and off without enough time to reconfigure the field. But when that I am begins to be lived in silence, in gestures, posture, in the way you breathe and respond to life, it stabilizes. And with that, reality begins to bend. There is a profound difference between saying, I am peace, and living as someone who chooses not to react to chaos. Between declaring, I am worthy, and softly lifting your shoulders as you walk into a place. The vibrational decree becomes real when it ceases to be a verbal effort and turns into a continuous frequency, almost invisible, but absolutely coherent. The external reality has no choice but to adjust itself to your internal constancy. The universe does not recognize words alone, it recognizes patterns. And the pattern you sustain with constancy becomes the signature of your vibration. When I am is embodied, not just spoken, the field stops trying to guess who you are and begins to deliver experiences compatible with your real presence. What once seemed improbable begins to happen quietly because now there is vibrational ground to sustain the new. This is the true power of I am. It is not a shortcut nor a trick. It is a vibrational home, an inner space where your essence and your reality meet. And once you inhabit that space with truth, the world around you begins to recognize not what you said you were, but what you have become. Bruce Lipton teaches us that the body is a faithful reflection of the beliefs you embody, not the ideas you read or the phrases you occasionally repeat, but what you assume as truth, vibrating silently within. Each internalized I am becomes a command to your biology, your behavior, and inevitably to the quantum field around you. Neville Goddard, with his symbolic and powerful language, sums it up. You do not manifest what you desire, you manifest what you assume to be. And assuming is not just declaring, it is inhabiting. It is sustaining the vibration of an identity with such presence that the universe can no longer distinguish it from physical reality. What was intention becomes state. What was possibility becomes ground. The I am is the invisible pen with which you write your timeline. And the most surprising thing, that pen is neutral. It does not choose for you. It only records with fidelity what you decide to affirm as who you are. You can write scarcity or abundance, limitation or power, fear or love. Everything begins in identity. It does not matter how many times you have used I am against yourself. It does not matter how long you have inhabited smaller versions of your story. The field holds no grudge. It responds to the now. And the now is always ready to be rewritten. All it takes is to stop repeating the past and begin to declare with awareness the present you wish to expand. This is the manifesto of the divine state. To stop using I am as a mirror of wounds and begin to use it as a creative tool of your eternal presence. Not because you want to appear better, but because you have decided to remember who you truly are. And when that I am becomes a vibrational home, reality kneels in silence and responds.